Mama Savage.
Hi there, Vitalis Savage Queen. We'll be going behind the scenes of Spotted. Disclaimer: this does not show the full process of the animation, only partially. So sit back and enjoy. The creepypasta that we are listening to is called We're Being Quarantined, but I do not think it's the government doing it, by Mr.Creeps.
With all this talk of a virus, I can't say I'm surprised when an announcement was made that we were now quarantined. It came from a large black truck using a loudspeaker at the end of our block. Soon after, men and women dressed in strange, thick clothing that would have been at home in the wardrobe of a prepper or a serial killer marched down the road. They had masks on with large glass eye holes. The eye holes were the only thing that made them look human. They went house by house, an announcement playing from the same truck as the masked soldiers knocked on doors. When they knocked on mine, I was hesitant to open it. I lived by myself and I knew that I wasn't sick, but for some reason, the way they knocked frightened me. It was 3 loud thumps that I could have heard from anywhere in the house. It actually made me jump a bit, even though I had watched them come down the walk. I opened the door slowly and I peered out into the darkening evening. The truck had parked right outside on the street and I could see the masked soldiers spread out among the other houses where they were either pulling people out onto the lawn or breaking down the door. The truck itself had a strange logo on it, like a warped American flag. As soon as the door was open enough for a hand to fit through, a gloved hand did just that. It gripped the wood of the door and shoved it back into me, knocking me back a few steps. "Let us in, now, sir." The voice caught me off guard and I started for a moment. "Let us in right this minute, or we will shoot." Fine, come in." The door shoved me back again and the masked people entered. The boots were loud and crisp on my wooden floor, as 2 of the soldiers flooded into the room and set about searching it, rifles against their shoulders. And they shouted for anyone else in the house to come out. "I live alone," I shouted once I had regained my footing. I lost it again when a smaller masked soldier came in and shoved me against the wall. "Stay." The force behind the voice made me close my mouth, but it was more feminine than the ones who were shouting throughout my house. I looked down at the soldier, trying to knock down my anger. "Is there anyone else in the house?" I just told. Her forearm pressed up under my chin and caused my voice to catch. "Yes or no, sir?" I could see through the glass eye holes that wide hazel eyes searched over me, and her brows were down heavy over them. They didn't fit the hardness in her voice. "No." "Are you sick?" "No." I pulled at her arm and she released me. I coughed a few times and she actually took another step back. "I'm really not." "It doesn't mean you aren't a carrier," she said and turned to the hall as the 2 other soldiers returned. "Clear?" "Clear. Moving on to the next one," one of them said before he turned and grabbed the shoulder of the man behind him. "Stay and make sure things go smoothly." "Yes, sir," the other said and took up position beside the door as the other left. He stared me down, which really felt unnecessary when he already had a gun. "Don't do anything stupid." "What's going on?" I asked him, but he kept still and silent. The woman was working on something at her belt and came up with a needle and a vial. "We're taking blood," she said. "For what?" "That's none of your concern. For the next few weeks, the entire neighborhood is quarantined. She handed the needle and vial to the other soldier and then pushed out my sleeve. She ran her thumb over the crook of my arm and then reached over for the needle. If you try to leave the area, you'll be shot. You try to fight us, you'll be shot. Are you serious? I hissed through my teeth as the needle broke the skin, and then she attached the vial. That's bullshit. How are we going to eat? I have to work. You will be provided meals for the time you are here. She popped off the vial and held it up to the fading sunlight. She seemed to find what she was looking for and pocketed before taking out another. As for work, haven't you been watching the news? You'll be paid for however long you're quarantined. She pocked the next vial and then removed the needle and pulled down my sleeve. Done? The soldier beside her asked. She gave a curt nod. Done. He looks like a good candidate, but I'll have the test done by midnight. Candidate? I asked and she turned back to me. Outside contact is not allowed. The telephone and cable lines have already been cut. I need your cell phone. What for? She held out a gloved hand. You can give it, or we can take it forcefully. The soldier beside her relaxed his stance and took a step. I cursed and pulled my phone out of my pocket and slammed the phone into her hand. There. I don't have any other phones here. You can look around if you want. You probably already did, I bet. Thank you, she said, and she handed the phone to the soldier. On the plus side, electric and water will be running normally. Your rations will be dropped off in the next half hour. She patted my shoulder as the soldier opened the door. Think of this as a chance to catch up with some good bugs. Are you going to tell my family? I asked, and the woman turned back. Do they live in the development? No. Then they will be informed through our contact group. Don't worry about them. She went out the door and the soldier followed after. I sneered at their backs and I slammed the door. I rubbed at my arm as I went over to the window and I looked out. They were efficient, if anything. The people that were once in the yards were gone. Their doors already closed up and the soldiers moved on to the next houses on the street where the same scene played out. I pulled up a chair to the window and I watched. Night had fallen by the time the rations had showed up. They were brought by a young man who had removed his mask and gloves. He grinned at me as I opened the door. His brown hair stuck up at odd angles and there was a sheen of sweat to his skin, even though it had to almost be freezing out. He dropped a large box on my doorstep and grinned. Rations for the next 2 days. Why aren't you wearing your mask? His grin widened. There's no reason to on such a nice night. What about the virus? I asked as I bent and opened the box. There were packages of meat and eggs, stuff that seemed strange to be rations. There were a few jugs of water too. A bottle of iron supplements laid at the bottom, which I pulled out and I rolled in my hand. What's this for? Just to be on the safe side. He dug into a pocket and came out with a folded piece of paper. I need you to sign this. I took the paper and I looked it over. It was just a confirmation that I had received my box of rations. I took the offered pen and I signed my name at the bottom under another signature. Awesome, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. He took off down the sidewalk. But there was no truck or car waiting for him. Instead, he turned right and went down the sidewalk to where the road dipped. I stayed on my stoop and I watched him. Beyond the dip, there was a halo of white light, like you would see from the outside of a baseball stadium. I closed the box and I sat inside the door before I took a few steps onto my lawn and towards the lights. I moved slowly, the frozen grass sounding like thunder to my ears with each step. The entire area down the hill was encompassed in bright white light. Tents had been set up, and a fence had been placed around the road and into the yards of neighboring houses. There was a line of people at one end of the compound, surrounded by soldiers. None of the soldiers were wearing their masks. The people were being funneled into one of the tents, but no one came out. And that was when I looked around the area and noticed that there was only one other house on my street with the lights on. All the rest were dark windows without even a porch light on. Not a great night for a stroll. I stepped away from the tree and held my hands up at the sound of the voice. I turned slowly to find the woman from before leaning against a mailbox a few feet behind me. She didn't have a weapon, but I had a feeling her soldier friend was nearby. Your delivery boy said it was nice out. Wanted to check. I bet. She pushed off the mailbox and tucked a few strands of her black hair behind her ear. She wore no mask, just like the others. You should get back inside before you catch the virus. You guys don't seem worried. Oh, we're worried. Very worried, which is why we're doing this. She came over to stand beside me and looked down at the tents. We're doing what we need to do to survive. What are you doing? Culling the herd, she said simply, and there was a faint smile folding into the cheeks of her thin face. You're lucky. What do you mean by that? She waved a hand. I'm just being dumb. Don't listen to me. I had a bit too much to drink tonight. Anyway, I got your blood test done. So am I free to go? Nope, she said, popping the last letters with a chuckle. She may have really been drunk, which concerned me. But your blood is clean. The cleanest I've seen in a long while. It surprised me. Yup, it really did. That's a good thing, right? Very, very good. You're as clean as can be. She leaned towards me. There was a click on in the darkness and she sighed. Of course they're watching. I turned and looked around, but didn't see anything which made my fear rise and choke my throat. She grabbed my arm and rubbed it with her other hand. I'm not gonna do anything, alright. We're just having a nice chat. She looked up to me and her features seemed to sober. They get all touchy at night. You should get back inside for now and get a good night's sleep. What about them? I pointed to the line of people. She patted my arm and stepped away and out into the road, her boots clacking on the asphalt. Oh, them? They're not your concern anymore. And go on before they get tired of waiting and force you back inside.